The Newshour Special Edition.
Namaskar, good evening. You're watching the special edition of the Newshour and I'm Swati Joshi. The situation in Goa where due to apathy, due to mismanagement on ground and the alleged fluctuation in the oxygen supply has till now claimed 83 lives. The government was in denial all along, but after being pulled up by the Goa bench of the Bombay High Court, they have installed 20,000 litre capacity oxygen cylinder. There was also a political tiff between the Chief Minister of Goa and the Health Minister. The Chief Minister kept saying there's no shortage of oxygen, while the Health Minister said the Chief Minister is misinformed. He does not have real data available with him. He does not know what the status is on ground. Even last night, 8 people lost their lives due to this fluctuation. Now the Goa government assures the problem has been solved, but who's accountable for 83 deaths?
हमने क्रायोजेनिक टैंक बसाने के वास्ते आज ने पूरा जो थोड़ा बहुत प्रॉब्लम जो जीएमसी में चल रहा था वो पूरा प्रॉब्लम ख़त्म हो चुका है कि हम 100% यानी जो कोविड हॉस्पिटल ओल्ड जीएमसी में था वो क्रायोजेनिक टैंक पे हमने शिफ्ट कर दिया है और बाकी पेशेंट को हमने सुपर स्पेशलिटी में शिफ्ट कर दिया है, इसलिए अभी ज़्यादा प्रॉब्लम नहीं रहा.
But the question is it only due to the erratic oxygen supply that is choking Goa's fight against the pandemic? The opposition has been vocal in highlighting the mismanagement on ground, also demanding the resignation of the Chief Minister of Goa. Listen to a couple of reactions. Okay, before we play out those reactions, we have our guests on the broadcast. Let's go across to them. Aparajita Sarangi, MP and also National Spokesperson of the BJP joins us. We also have MC Abbas, political analyst, on the broadcast with us. Good evening to both of you. I first want to go across to Ms. Sarangi. Ms. Sarangi, who's responsible for 83 deaths? The Chief Minister all along kept saying that there's no shortage of oxygen, and the Health Minister said that the Chief Minister has no idea about what's happening on ground. He first claimed that people did die due to shortage of oxygen.
Whatever has happened and whatever is happening is extremely unfortunate. I think no words can express the anguish of all of us, the people of this country, seeing what has happened in Goa Medical College and Hospital. Now, let me tell you that when we have to fix responsibilities, we have to get into the details of things. We have to look at it very meticulously, and if the heads have to roll, heads would roll, but that should be backed by proper investigation. Now, it's very unfortunate that the Health Minister is passing the buck to the Chief Minister. I think collectively, I would say all are responsible. It's everybody's responsibility. And let me tell you, as far as the central government is concerned, the Health and Family Welfare Ministry is concerned, we had raised the allocation of Goa from 26 metric ton to 46 metric ton. So I would not say that there was paucity of oxygen. There was less of oxygen. I think it was pure mismanagement, pure miscalculation, apathy, indifference. But then before I say something, I think there should be proper inquiry, and whosoever is responsible should be proceeded against.
Absolutely. So then who is responsible is the question. That is the big question. Who is responsible for the deaths that have taken place? The Bombay High Court, Goa bench of the Bombay High Court has pulled up the state government post that in the status report, the Goa government has mentioned they have now installed this 20,000 litre capacity oxygen tank. Could you not take, or other states not take a cue from what was happening in the national capital? And there were SOS put out by hospitals, relatives of COVID patients, Ms. Sarangi, and the hospital staff had alerted the government about this fluctuating supply in oxygen.
I entirely agree with you. There can be absolutely no compromise when the lives of people are concerned. It's not a question of one life or two lives, whatever the number of lives. In fact, I would just say that it is a great lesson for all the state governments, all the hospitals, all those who are actually looking into this particular issue at this critical juncture in our country. See, I would say the ward boy is responsible. I would say those who are giving instructions are responsible. The doctor is responsible. The nurse is responsible. It's a collective failure. The failure of the administration, the failure of this entire setup. So if the oxygen is not able to reach the patient, and even if it reaches the patient, whether it is going unhindered to the patient or not, whether it is being given to the patient without any hindrance, without any obstacle, that's the whole question. So I don't think here there is a question of supply. I think it's here there's the question of kind of, this entire trajectory, this entire path, right from the place where the oxygen cylinder kept, and from there taking these oxygen cylinders in the trolley. Somebody said the trolley was not working well. In the trolley, that the person concerned, and then giving the oxygen to the patient. So I think it's a collective failure. Everybody is equally responsible. And as you mentioned,
collective failure. I appreciate you're taking that stand and you're admitting that it is a collective failure. I want to go across to MC Abbas as well. MC Abbas, you've heard Ms. Sarangi. She has nowhere tried to defend the Goa government. She's saying whoever is responsible should be pulled up. She's saying this is collective failure. And what the court has said in its, I beg your pardon, what the government has said in its status report is that they were supplied oxygen by center. The Chief Minister kept saying there's no shortage. The situation that is unfolding in Goa is pretty much, it plays out like what happened in the national capital. There was oxygen available. The Delhi government asked the manufacturers to store it. That's what the BJP says, and that the center was supplying them with oxygen. But none of it reaches the patient end of the day. Where really lies the problem?
Satyasai has answered, the man in the opposition in Goa. Undoubtedly, the government, the BJP government in Goa has been clueless. They've been bumbling throughout. There were SOS calls made from the hospital time and again, but the state government did not pay heed to. Unfortunately, Mr. Pramod Sawant's head should roll. Yes, Sarangi ji, I completely agree with you. Heads must roll. There must be a clear-cut investigation on the SEM. A wise man is somebody who learns from others' mistakes. There were so many states which were bumbling down. I think the least Goa Chief Minister, Mr. Pramod Sawant, must and should have called out for a lockdown. There were many petty shops and states which did their own mini lockdown, but there was no lockdown from the state. There must have been restrictions coming across from the tourist end. Also, many other governance measures must have been taken. But unfortunately, the part about the Bharatiya Janata Party government is they know how to come into power, they know how to get the votes, but they do not know how to govern. One such big example is here in the state of Goa.
But MC Abbas, the Goa government is also claiming that they tested half of its population. They're saying...
Just allow me 10 seconds.
I am just adding...
Just allow me 10 seconds.
I'm just adding to what you're saying, and I'm asking you only to respond to that. I am asking you only to respond to what I'm asking you. The Goa government is claiming, MC Abbas, that the positivity rate is 33%, that they've tested half of its population, and for now they've shifted all these patients to the super speciality hospital. So they're talking about the follow-up action that they've taken now. How do you respond to that?
But how late are the measures taken? Now they come up with press releases that 50% of the private hospitals have been allocated, 50% in not enough respective SIRs. In accordance with the National Pandemic Act, you can even go up to 80%. Here in the state of Karnataka, it is up to 80% in the private hospital. Some hospitals, it is even up to 100%. The fact of the matter is, too late measures, too little. Sarangi ji, the BJP spokesperson MP, says that the lesson has been learned. Excuse me, ma'am, lesson learned on the body of 80 people dying. After 80 people had to die for your party to learn the lessons. I'm sorry, the Bharatiya Janata Party has failed. Will you be answerable to those 80 people who have died because of the failure of the state government? So this shows how poor this government is and how Mr. Pramod Sawant must and should resign. Right now, the BJP state government, Mr. Vishwajit Rana,
Ms. Sarangi, respond to that. The demand is that the Chief Minister should step down because they failed to handle the situation.
I say that the Bharatiya Janata Party does not want to indulge in any kind of petty politics at this juncture. We do not differentiate between one state and the other on the ground that a particular state is run by a particular political party, which is not the BJP. I think this is not the time. Let us see what is right and what is wrong. We want our people to be healthy, to be well, and it is the duty of all the hospitals. This is the Goa Medical College and Hospital. We want all the hospitals to ensure that whosoever is the patient actually comes out smilingly from the hospital. Everybody should be hale and hearty, and we have to ensure that the recovery rate goes higher and higher. That's what our intention is. You all are aware of the fact that for the past 2 months, the central government under the leadership of Prime Minister Modi.
You know, Ms. Sarangi, it's really good to hear that you want to keep politics aside. But these reactions need to come in from the state leadership. The state leadership needs to take responsibility. They need to be held responsible, because even last night people have lost their lives.
Just give me 30 seconds. On 10th of February, we were actually producing 5,600 metric ton of oxygen per day. And now, after all the efforts of the central government, right now we are producing 9,524 metric ton per day of oxygen. Oxygen is not scarce because of our wholehearted efforts, and it's the whole of government approach that we have adopted. Now, as far as this particular incident is concerned, I will reiterate, this is extremely unfortunate, but there should be proper investigation before we start leveling charges. And then after the investigation, whatever the report, whosoever is responsible should be proceeded against very strictly. But at this juncture, I think we should derive lessons
from
this.
But MC Abbas, it was on 11th of May. It was on 11th of May that the Health Minister of Goa, Vishwajit Rane, said that people are dying due to shortage of oxygen. If he could identify what the problem was, why were others in denial?
Absolutely. I couldn't agree with you more on this front, Swati ji, and I also appreciate Ms. Sarangi that she's coming out, taking the blame in the head. And of course, those who are found to be responsible must and should resign, be it the Health Minister Vishwajit Rane or the Chief Minister Pramod Sawant. The problem of the matter, the cat is out of the bag. There has been the worm of cans is out there. There has been problem dividend from Mr. Chief Minister Pramod Sawant, and the problem with being the Health Minister. They have been fighting amongst themselves. There have been internal politics in the BJP governance here in the state of Goa, and who is suffering? Unfortunately, my brothers and sisters in Goa are suffering, and that is absolutely not called for. The right way, the wise way to go. I'm not questioning the centre, Sarangi ji. I'm questioning your governance.
But then MC Abbas, the point is, if the Chief Minister of Goa, according to you, should step down because of these deaths that have taken place, would you demand the same from the Chief Minister of the National Capital? Would you say he's responsible for the deaths that have taken place in the National Capital due to shortage of oxygen?
Let me be very categorical here, Swati ji. If I know who you're trying to name, let me bring out the name. It might be an Arvind Kejriwal or a B.S. Yediyurappa. Any state, if the respective chief ministers or their government have found to be irresponsible, I think on all moral grounds, they should tender their resignation. Be it a Pramod Sawant, Arvind Kejriwal, B.S. Yediyurappa, or even a Uddhav Thackeray. Irrespective, let me say, across all party lines. BJP ho ya Congress ho ya aap. If you're not able to do your duty, kindly resign and get out of there. Because of your power, innocent lives are being lost. Unfortunately, people are dying. Shortage of oxygen in Goa. No lockdown in Goa. Tourists allowed to go freely in Goa. What measures did you take, Mr. Chief Minister Pramod Sawant? What restrictions did you bring about?
What measures were taken? Okay.
The lockdown?
The second wave was coming. Ms. Sarangi, the centre says that they had put this out in public domain. They had warned the states. They had asked the states to be prepared because the second wave was coming. What did the Goa government do? What did the Goa administration do?
See, I am extremely candid about this matter, and give me about 30 seconds to respond. On 17th of March, the Honorable Prime Minister had taken a meeting with all the chief ministers, and he had categorically told all the chief ministers that the second wave was coming, and whatever the indications that we had, this second wave would be extremely disastrous, very dangerous, and many lives would go. And at that point of time, it was estimated that 1 lakh lives per day would go. But then, of course, it has crossed many folds, 4 times. But what I'm trying to tell you is that Honorable Prime Minister had told all the states to actually prepare themselves for this particular situation. I'm not talking of Goa, I'm talking of all the states, 28 states and 7 union territories. I think all of them should have come forward and should have looked into themselves and looked into their arrangements, and they should have brought themselves up. Let me tell you very clearly, that the central government's role is limited to ensuring the availability of resources and giving necessary directions to the state governments and providing the desired support to the state governments. But it's the state governments on which lies the responsibility of implementation, of execution, of planning. So I think all the state governments, including Goa, should have actually looked into their whole system and should have actually plugged the holes.
Quick point, Swati ji, if I could.
All right, Ms.
narrate what the
Sarangi and
incident
MC
which took
Abbas,
place.
that's all the time I have.
Quick point.
Just a few seconds, MC Abbas. I have to move on to another debate. Yes.
Tanker. Yes, there was an oxygen tanker. I thank the Almighty Lord because of preventing the situation. There was an oxygen tank leak in Goa. Unfortunately, there was one person who happened to come across with some minor injuries, but 500 lives were saved. Let's really thank the frontline workers and the doctors in Goa who are putting their life at risk, and they are doing a good job.
Absolutely. Thank you very much, MC Abbas, for highlighting that. Thank you, Ms. Sarangi, for joining us on the broadcast and taking all the questions. Thank you. We are moving on now and we're shifting our focus to the horrifying images that came in from 3 states as India drowns in the second wave of the COVID pandemic. The horrifying images were of dead bodies floating in rivers and washing up on the banks of the Ganga river. Now, BJP leader Amit Malviya has dug out a 2015 report and has claimed that river burials are customary.
पंचक में 5 कार्य वर्जित है, मूल रूप से शवदाह नहीं किया जा सकता है। ये शवदाह करना हो, आवश्यक हो, तो कुछ का पुतला बना के 4 और उनका चिता पे रोपण किया जाए, विधोत पूजन किया जाए और तब दाह किया जाए, या जल में प्रवाहित कर दें। समाधि, मिट्टी समाधि जो होती है, भूमि समाधि, उसमें कर दें, तो यही एक विकल्प है, इसमें कर सकते हैं।
Well, the tradition versus whataboutery debate has now begun on this issue, and the opposition has slammed the BJP, has slammed the centre for this report which has now been dug out by Amit Malviya, citing that this is customary, this has been happening in the country.
बीजेपी के अमित मालवीय जी ने जो ट्वीट किया है, 2015 में भी गंगा में उत्तर प्रदेश में सब तैरते हुए पाए गए थे। इनकी मानसिकता पर तरस आती है। ये अपनी नाकामी को छुपाने के लिए हर बात में पूर्व की सरकारों पर दोष देते हैं। इसमें भी इन्होंने यही किया है। ये शर्मनाक है। इनका अमानवीय चेहरा उजागर हुआ है। ये घटिया राजनीति भाजपा बंद करे। अब जितना ढोल ये पीटेंगे, इनकी पोल उतनी खुलेगी। ये अपनी नाकामी पर कुछ नहीं बोल रहे।
Government, also the UP government, they are behaving in a very inhuman manner. When the bodies, countless bodies are being discovered on the banks of rivers, in the rivers floating, all that the government is doing is indulging into whataboutery, trying to say that it has happened in the past. Did people die in thousands because there was no oxygen? Did this happen in the past?
गांव में भयावह स्थिति है, आप इमेजिन नहीं कर सकते। अंडर रिपोर्टिंग की बात होती है, अंडर रिपोर्टिंग तो शहरों में हो रही है, गांवों में तो उत्तर प्रदेश में कहीं कोई रिपोर्टिंग ही नहीं हो रही। It's really unfortunate. One should not be so insensitive, particularly the government of the day and the party which is claiming that it's the largest party in the world.
कमाल है भारतीय जनता पार्टी का। नदी में लाशें तैरती नजर आ रही हैं, नदी के किनारे लाशों को जानवर नोचते नजर आ रहे हैं। ये भारतीय जनता पार्टी की सरकार अपनी अवस्था पे पर्दा डालने की कोशिश कर रही है। ये साफ दर्शाता है कि भारतीय जनता पार्टी की अमानवीय सोच है।
While some have chosen to remain in denial and are still silent on these horrifying images that India has witnessed, the authorities have been forced to take note of the severity of the situation. And now a lot of advisories and directions are being issued, reports are being sought, and action is being sought on ground? Let's in fact open this up and go across to our guests. Aparajita Sarangi continues to be with us, MP and also a national spokesperson of the Bharatiya Janata Party. We're joined by Ghanshyam Tiwari as well, spokesperson of the Samajwadi Party. I want to go across to Mr. Ghanshyam Tiwari first. Ghanshyam Tiwari, Amit Malviya has dug out a report from 2015. He says that this is customary. River burials, water burials do happen. Similar images also emerged in 2015. How do you respond to that?
Well, shocking, stunning, tragic that on a day when the Prime Minister himself is saying that he urges states to report numbers transparently, and former Home Minister P. Chidambaram has spoken about conspiracy of centre and some states to suppress COVID fatalities, that village after village, town after town, you can see burning fires, you can see floating bodies. At a time when Amit Malviya, who probably has no stake, there's no stake he has apart from building the PR of the Prime Minister, building the PR of Bharatiya Janata Party and spreading fake news. These are his three jobs. So he's doing his job, but it is tragic that BJP is led by such people whose job is to build fake PR on dead bodies. The only thing that Uttar Pradesh has to solve for is how do we reduce fatalities, how do we reduce the spread of the disease, how do we increase vaccination, how do we remove the specter of helplessness that village after village, town after town is facing in Uttar Pradesh. BJP has lost several MLAs. Did they die in 2015 or did they die in the second wave? Their own MPs and leaders have returned to their party members. Even till date, the Chief Minister, who's an unscientific propagandist, is saying that everything is perfectly fine. What the state wants is a very transparent system, a team that says every day that this is the target that we are taking, this is how we are going to reduce the fatalities, reduce the case load, improve the facilities that is available, and this is how we are going to incorporate professional talent to fight this.
Ghanshyam Tiwari, those review meetings are also meetings are also happening with the chief ministers, with the officials, with the experts, with the scientists. But what amazes is the defense that had come in this particular case. I want to go across to Ms. Sarangi. Ms. Sarangi, if similar images also were witnessed in 2015, was there a pandemic back then? Did people die of an infection? Were bodies being thrown into the rivers because there was a fear that people might contract infection from the dead bodies, because people could not afford to give a decent burial, a decent cremation? What does this report mean of 2015? Are you trying to justify what has happened by saying it's a tradition, it's fine? Water burials do take place in the country?
My response would be in two parts. At the outset, let me tell you that the government under the leadership of Prime Minister Modi is currently putting in all efforts to ensure that this particular second wave of COVID is handled very well. And we also prepare ourselves for the future. All the people sitting in the opposition should also learn to accept, to note, to acknowledge, and to appreciate that our recovery rate is going up and the fatality rate is coming down. And we are handling the entire oxygen supply extremely well by now. You know, from 5,600 metric ton per day, we have gone up to 9,524 metric ton per day in the last 2 months. And I think all the loopholes are being plugged one after the other. Vaccination also, I think the Prime Minister himself came out before the nation, and he put forth the blueprint of vaccination before all of us, 216 crore doses by 31st December of this calendar year. Now, having said that, let me tell you that we are definitely on the right track, and I think the opposition should not oppose for the sake of opposing. However, as far as the dead bodies are concerned, I can only say that it is a ghastly sight. I must admit, it is a ghastly sight. I'm not only the Bharatiya Janata Party spokesperson or the Member of Parliament from Bhubaneswar, I'm also a citizen of this country. I'm also a human being. The sight is ghastly. Having said that, let me tell you that when these things happen, whether it is Bihar, whether it is UP, whether it is NDA and government, let's not indulge in politics. A sight is a sight, and something which is bad, something which is right is always right. Now, there is a report of 2015 which has come out. Now, Shri Amit Malviya ji, who is my colleague, a respected colleague of mine, has put forth before us a report. He has not come to any conclusive evidence or he has not come to any conclusion. He's not pronouncing any judgment. He has come out with a report which says that in 2015 also there were instances of river burial, water burial in UP. Now, I would suggest that this is definitely a very ghastly sight, should not have happened. But why has it happened? I mean, if
Ms. Sarangi, was it of this magnitude?
If there is
was it of this magnitude? Was there a sudden surge in deaths? Also, Ms. Sarangi,
yes.
Also, Ms. Sarangi, till date we don't know how many of those were COVID bodies. The administration said that the COVID tests could not be conducted because they were decomposed beyond measure.
I'm coming to that. I'm not saying I'm here to defend it, but I am only saying that we should act with maturity. You know, these things cannot be just, talked about lightly. This has to be investigated into, and if there is a report of 2015, let's look at that report. Let there be a proper investigation as to why it happened and who was responsible, and only then we can come to any conclusion.
No, but why are we falling back on the 2015 report when we are talking about the investigation into the current deaths and bodies that are being seen floating on the rivers, Ghanshyam Tiwari?
I'm saying when the investigation would take place, it would definitely look into the report of 2015, which Sri Amit Malviyaji brought out before us. So that's what it is.
Ghanshyam Tiwari, respond.
And this is absolutely shocking that a member of parliament will say that the bodies who are floating have any bearing with what happened in 2015. Absolutely no bearing. This is absolutely depressing logic to hear from somebody who's as erudite as the member of parliament here. Second, that a government that could not even empathize and attest the death of over 700 teachers who passed away due to COVID in election duty in Uttar Pradesh at a diktat of the state. When their numbers were given, when names were given, family interviews were published. Do you expect this government to go and investigate these deaths? They will not. Their entire agenda from day one, you take the last 1 month, every day Uttar Pradesh has reported more cases than Delhi and Chhattisgarh, and it has reported less deaths than Delhi and Chhattisgarh. There are more bodies you find floating in Ganga and find river burials than Uttar Pradesh reporting every day as death numbers. The entire agenda is propaganda. Somehow save the image of the Chief Minister, just like the entire agenda of BJP's propaganda somehow save the image of the Prime Minister. They are not telling who's their team, what is their responsibility, whose job is on the line. How will the nation be saved? We are not interested in your propaganda of what happened in 2015. We are interested in
sound and curiosity find nothing. Please try to understand what I said.
In saving the image of the Prime
we are
Minister
not
and
coming
the
to
Chief
any
Minister.
conclusion. The entire matter deserves investigation, and when the investigation takes place, all kinds of statements
have died. The dead don't speak. The bodies are speaking. Who will investigate?
I cannot jump to any conclusion. This is definitely a ghastly sight. This should not have happened. I'm not here to defend the whole incident. But at the same time, I would say that unless and until there is a proper investigation done, we cannot come to any conclusion, and this would be absolutely immature to do so.
And who will investigate?
But that's unfortunate, isn't it, that we are saying that we cannot come to a conclusion. We don't know where these bodies came from. We don't know how many of them were COVID patients. So we will not be able to put that into data. That's unfortunate when we say we cannot reach a conclusion. Thank you very much, Ms. Sarangi, and thank you, Ghanshyam Tiwari, for joining us. BJP says this is tradition, this was customary, river burials, and the opposition slams saying this is whataboutery.